I, 27, female, am supposed to get married in 3 weeks. My fiancé Adrian, 28, male, and I have been together for the past 10 years, and he finally proposed a couple of months ago. We've been friends since school, and our families know each other quite well. Even my stepmom, Jenna, 47, female, who hates me, always seemed to like Adrian. Jenna got married to my dad when I was in middle school, probably when I was in 8th grade. My parents had never been married, but my mother did have partial custody of me. My parents had always been on good terms, even after they broke up, and co-parented me to the best of their abilities, for which I will always be grateful to them. My dad met Jenna through work, and after dating for a couple of years, they got married. Jenna was really nice to me while she was dating my dad, probably because she wanted to consolidate her place as my stepmother and make me feel comfortable. So I wouldn't get in the way of their relationship and they could get married. Only after that she'd start showing her true colors. My relationship with Jenna changed for the worse after she got married to my father, and she knew that there was nothing in her way to stop her from treating me badly. I was really young, but that didn't prevent her from being downright nasty to me, taking potshots at me and just being a generally horrible presence in my home. But she only did all of this because my dad wasn't around to watch her. She was pleasant to me whenever we were in my dad's company. For the first couple of months, I was really confused about this sudden change in her behavior and blamed myself for it because I believed that I must have done something to set her off. After a while, I couldn't take it anymore, so I talked to my dad about it, who then spoke to Jenna, and we had a family meeting about this, where she vehemently denied being anything but nice to me and accused me of making up lies. She seemed very upset and began to cry, so I was told to leave the room because they wanted to talk in person. But I remember I didn't actually go back to my room and stood right outside of their view to eavesdrop on the conversation because I was just as confused as my dad and I wanted to know what she was going to say about me. I was generally a well-mannered kid, and eavesdropping wasn't in my nature, but I'm so glad that I chose to do that day, because otherwise I never would have found out about Jenna's truth. I've heard her tell my dad that I'd never seemed to like her, even while they were in a relationship, and would always be rude to her, but she never spoke up about it because she figured that if she was nice to me, then I'd eventually come to accept her. Which was absolutely not true. It was actually the same thing that she was doing to me, but she was accusing me of doing it to her to mislead my dad. She even went on to say that she believed that I was doing this because since my terrible behavior hadn't driven her away, and she still ended up getting married to my dad despite me, I was now doubling down on it and trying to sabotage their marriage indifferently and coming up with lies to make her seem like the bad guy. My dad seemed to be in disbelief while Jenna was telling him all of this baloney and asked her if she was sure if that's actually what was happening, as it just didn't seem like me. And then she told him that it was all true, and she believed that the reason behind this was that I, for whatever reason, thought that she was coming in the way of my parents' relationship and that she was the one preventing them from getting together. She even suggested that I might be the reason any of his previous relationships didn't work either, because just after spending some time with me, they'd realize how I felt about them and make a run for it the first chance they got. Because obviously no father would pick his girlfriend over his daughter. My dad had only ever brought home 2 girlfriends to meet me before Jenna, and he dumped both of them, so that was completely invalid. But she was trying hard to sell this absurd theory that I was actually upset about my parents not being together and blamed her for that. Ever since I was a kid, I'd only seen my parents as friends who'd take turns to look after me. So this theory of hers that I was preventing him from going back to my mom didn't make any sense. My mom had also dated a couple of men, and I was familiar with them, so I didn't have any hopes of my parents getting back together. In fact, before they got married, I'd even had a couple of conversations with them about how pleased I'd be if my dad actually married and made her a permanent part of our lives. That was back when she was actually nice to me. But after I heard that conversation, I realized what was going on because even though I was little, I wasn't stupid. I understood that she wanted me out of the way because I was the only thing that still linked him to his life with my mother, and she probably couldn't stand that. She was jealous and insecure, and so she wanted me out. She obviously couldn't say that to my dad, so she decided that she was going to treat me badly and drive me out instead. Even as a little kid, I remember feeling so angry that I went back up to my room and screamed into my pillow for a couple of seconds. Then, as a 12-year-old, I made up my mind that I was not going to let Jenna win and make me seem like the weak one. That day, when my dad asked me if I was actually having problems with Jenna, I decided to tell him that I'd been having problems with her in the past, but I would try to get better, and that answer seemed to satisfy him. And so the competition finally began. I decided that no matter how nasty she was to me, I wasn't going to let that get to me. And I certainly was not going to allow her to hurt my feelings so that I'll end up leaving my dad's side forever. I could complain to my dad yet again, but that would only lead to more family meetings and more discussions, and that would just leave my dad as a confused mess about whom to believe, his daughter or his wife. I decided that the better way to deal with this would be to just tough it out and make it known that Jenna had picked the wrong fight with the wrong kid. I was a kid, so you can't exactly blame me for making that decision. I just wanted to make it dramatic and outlast her. I used to watch a lot of TV as well, so blame it on that for my absurd plan. But anyway, I made up my mind and I decided that I wasn't going to let her get to me anymore. So for the next few years, she tried her very best to put me down and back me into a corner with her horrible behavior, but I just didn't pay any heed to her. I gritted my teeth and got through all with a smile, refusing to let her get under my skin. It was easier for me since I'd spent half the month at my mom's place, so it wasn't like I had to deal with Jenna all the time. And she'd be nice to me when my dad was around, so it wasn't that difficult for me to get through it all. Then I eventually moved out for college and would only come back home for the holidays. During that time, my dad would always be around, so it wasn't any trouble for me to deal with Jenna in recent times. She'd still look for opportunities to take digs at me when I'd come home, but now it just didn't matter because deep down, I knew that I'd won. And also, I'm a lot more mature now as compared to back then, so I'm not even bothered. Besides, now, whenever I visit home, I always come along with Adrian, and Jenna is forced to be nice to meet because he's around. Adrian has met my family loads of times, and I was actually surprised to see Jenna be genuinely nice to him the first couple of times. He knew about our history, but he's just generally a nice guy, so he was civil to her as well. And it was surprising to me because she seemed to actually like him, which I didn't even think was possible because I didn't think that she'd ever like something connected to me. However, I was relieved to see that she was nice to him and didn't treat him the same way that she treated me, because that would have been pretty awkward for all of us. Coming to what happened recently, Jenna sent Adrian a text a couple of days ago telling him a bunch of lies about me and suggesting that he make a run for it because getting married to me might ruin his life. She told him that I was seeing another guy, one of my friends from the neighborhood, behind his back, but she'd kept it a secret from him so far because she believed that I'd do the decent thing eventually and tell him the truth. But since I hadn't, she believed that she had to do it for me. She claimed that I was only getting married to him because he had a better job for now, but as soon as my other boyfriend could get a job that would equal his, I'd dump him and leave. She also said that she'd overheard me planning on the phone with the other guy and felt that it was her duty to warn him. Not a single word of this is true. But Jenna had sent him some more photos of me hanging out with that other guy, where she'd erased all the other people in the picture with us, and it just looked like it was the two of us together on a date. Those pictures were from his birthday party, but she'd edited them to make it look like I was sitting beside him and I was close, so it looked pretty suspicious. Adrian wasn't part of that circle, so it was just me at the party, and since he's not active on any of his social media accounts, he hadn't seen that picture earlier either. Jenna had told him in the text that he must not confront me about it because then she'd inevitably get involved and that would create a whole thing with my father, which would end up getting her in trouble. She instructed him to just break off the engagement without bringing up any of this, and that's where she messed up. Because she assumed that Adrian would trust her and those edited photos more than he trusted me. He came to me as soon as he received those texts and asked me what that was all about. He didn't even seem suspicious, just curious. After I read the text, I explained to him that she was just making up lies to sabotage us right before the wedding. He didn't even have to think for a second before believing me. I called my dad up immediately because I was fuming and I could no longer put up with her. I called him and told him about the text that his wife had sent. Adrian, in an attempt to ruin our relationship with just a couple of weeks to go before the wedding. I also told him about every other little thing that she'd done in the past and spared no detail. I spilled it all about our strained and competitive relationship, which I'd hidden from him for the sake of maintaining the peace in the family. But now, there was no point in doing that since it was clearer than ever that Jenna would never stop trying to mess with me. And I wasn't a child anymore, so I wasn't going to let her get away with this and try to engage in stupid mind games to prove that I'm somehow stronger like I did in the past. I told my dad everything that I'd mentioned earlier in this post and gave him an ultimatum. I told him that he could either cut ties with Jenna or I would cut him off instead. He asked me to give some time to think and at least talk to Jenna about this because he was just so confused and lost and hadn't even begun to process whatever I just told him. I told him that he had until the end of the day to get back to me, and after that, the ball was in his court. I personally believe that I was more than fair regarding how I reacted to the situation, and I didn't force my dad to do anything. It was all his choice. I'd ignored everything Jenna ever said for a long time, but now I couldn't go on ignoring it anymore because she was trying to meddle with my relationship and that wasn't going to fly. After giving my dad that ultimatum, I didn't speak to him for the rest of the day because I thought that he needed his space to come to a decision, so there was no way that I influenced his decision. It was completely his own choice. The reason that I'm stressing about the fact that I had no part to play in whatever decision he made is because everybody's blaming me for Jenna getting kicked out of her house and my dad telling her that he wants a divorce. By everyone, I mostly mean her friends and a couple of her relatives, but even then, it's a lot of people who are texting me to accuse me of sabotaging their marriage on purpose. Some of them have even texted me to say that I probably have been trying to do this ever since I was a kid, which is just absurd because if I tried to get rid of her when I was a child, I would have accomplished that way back and wouldn't have waited until now. My dad told me that day itself that he dumped Jenna and he sounded upset about it, so I decided to give him some time and didn't discuss it on the same day. It's been a couple of days now, but we still haven't talked about it because I've been so busy with the wedding preparation now that there's only a few weeks to go. There's also the fact that Jenna is constantly trying to text me and convince me that I need to tell my father to take her back. The other day, she sent me an email from a new account because I'd blocked her everywhere else and was practically begging me to talk to my father and make him take her back. She told me that she was just trying to mess with me and Adrian and she didn't actually mean to cause any trouble for us. I highly doubt that, but even if I do give her the benefit of the doubt, it still doesn't explain why she was egging him on to leave me without confronting me so I wouldn't even get a chance to explain myself. She said that after my phone call, my father confronted her immediately, and he was so insanely angry that she couldn't even explain herself properly. And he told her to leave, so she left in a hurry without getting a chance to explain everything properly. To be fair, I don't think explaining everything would have worked in her favor anyway, so it's probably best that she left without getting into the truth. But anyway, I read that email, and I've also been reading the text that her friends and family have been sending me, and I've honestly started to wonder if I'm the a-hole here. I can't help but feel that it was kind of unfair of me to give my dad that ultimatum, and I probably shouldn't have done that. I don't feel sorry for telling him the truth because he deserved to know and I deserve to get that off my chest, but I guess the ultimatum was a bit extreme. Jenna's living in a hotel right now, but she has limited money of her own since she quit her job a couple of years after marriage and hasn't bothered to save up. So she's pretty much counting on me to fix things between her and my dad. AITA for giving my dad an ultimatum to choose between me and my stepmom? Update 1. Hi, so thank you for all the lovely comments and the overwhelming support. It means a lot to both me and Adrian. I guess I was overthinking everything a little too much, and I didn't have to worry about being the bad guy or whatever. A lot of you asked me the real reason why I didn't tell my father anything about how Jenna was treating me as a kid, since some of y'all didn't buy the whole theory about me wanting to show that I was stronger and stuff. Well, to be honest, that was part of the truth, and I did want to show her that I was made of stronger stuff and she couldn't break me with her rude behavior. The other part of the reason was that my dad really seemed to be happy with her, and I didn't want to take that away from him. I was a pretty selfless kid, I think, and I really hadn't ever seen my dad look so happy just to be with someone. None of his other girlfriends had ever had this effect on him. I don't know how that witch did it, but my dad just became a happier, livelier, and more carefree person whenever he was around her. Which is why I didn't want to ruin it for him and kept everything under wraps. I spoke to my dad recently, a day or two after I posted here, and we had a real heart-to-heart about my childhood and how Jenna treated me. He apologized to me for not being around at the time because he was just so busy with work. And I forgave him for that because I can't honestly complain when he's given me a great life. As for Jenna, she'd always be amazingly nice to me whenever my dad was around, so there was no way he could have picked up on the tension between us, and I never told him either. So I don't blame him for not realizing that we had problems. He said that he did find it a little difficult to come to terms with what I told him, but after he spoke to her about it, once he got off the phone with me, he realized that he definitely had to break things off with her, and that he owed me a huge apology. Apparently, on being confronted about the texts that she'd sent to Adrian, she first tried to deny it and said that it must have been a glitch, but the text had obviously been typed out by her, so my dad asked her again. And then she confessed that she was trying to get the wedding cancelled on purpose, but said that she had a real reason for it. Her very real reason was apparently that my dad was contributing to the wedding, but she believed that he was sponsoring it entirely, which he wasn't. My dad's only paying for the venue. Adrian and I are covering everything else. Jenna and my dad were supposed to go on holiday in the next few months, so she was afraid that he'd end up spending way too much money on the wedding, and then they wouldn't be able to afford the holiday. She also believed that I was going to make a habit out of it and keep asking my dad for money whenever I needed it if he paid for my wedding. She had the audacity to tell my father that she was just trying to save him from having to deal with that. But my dad's not an idiot. He knew the only thing she was trying to save was their vacation. And out of anger, he kicked her out and told her not to come back because now he knew that whatever I told him was all true. She's been trying to reach out to him ever since she was forced to leave, but he's muted her and hasn't responded to her. It's honestly crazy how she was willing to screw up my wedding just because she wanted a holiday. And it's even funnier that she believed that I was going to spend my dad's money excessively when it's actually she who depends on my dad for money. But it's fine. My dad's filed for divorce, and I'm hoping that it will all be done soon. It's kind of upsetting that this is all happening with just a few weeks to go for my wedding. It's sad for my dad, but at least I'll finally be rid of her. Update 2. So there's just 1 week to go for the wedding, and a couple of days back, my dad's divorce proceedings finally started. I thought that he'd be a total emotional mess because they've been together for quite a while, but he's actually been dealing with it pretty well. Or maybe he's just suppressing everything and not letting us see him for a week. Whichever it is, I'm going to make sure that he's okay and put him in touch with a therapist and force him to go. Because my mother thinks that it's not good for him to hide his emotions, because then that means he'll have a meltdown eventually at some point in the future. Jenna's stopped trying to talk to me, which is a relief, because if she texted me anymore, then I probably would have been hard on her. My mother believes that it's the fault of the alimony that made her stop trying to fight against the divorce, and I believe that it's a likely theory. She's probably going to take that holiday on her own now. Adrian and my mom, both of them, have been a great support system for me. And my dad at this time, and I'm really grateful for both of them. My mom's actually been sending my dad meals because she knows that he struggles to make food for himself. It's not that he cannot, it's just that he's really bad at it, which is a trait that I've inherited. We're both really bad at cooking. That's why my dad and I have planned that we're all going to have dinner together at least once a week, so we keep in touch. And so he doesn't feel lonely and I don't feel guilty, which is something that I've been feeling a lot since I am technically why they had to break up. I know that I'm not supposed to feel guilty because I did the right thing, but I still do, and I'm trying to work on it with my therapist. Update 3. Adrian and I are married now, and it's been 2 weeks since my last update, and I'm so thankful that so many of you guys were so interested. Thanks a lot for all the love and support. We truly didn't expect this. It was a beautiful ceremony and reception. We couldn't have asked for a better wedding. All our friends and family were there, and it was just truly wonderful. I can continue to gush about it, but I think you guys would be more interested in what's going on with Dad and Jenna. So Jenna's demanding that she get to keep the house and an insane payout, but my dad's lawyer is fighting tooth and nail against it. It seems unlikely that she'll get any of it, especially not with my testimony against her. Now that she knows that my dad isn't going to fall for her little innocent act, the claws have really come out. My dad's going to therapy to discuss all of this, and I'm positive that he will get through it. Stay tuned for more stories from Argo Relationships.